Hello class and welcome to this Ghostbusters NES walkthrough right here on Video Games 101 by way of Let's Play with Briggins. I'm your instructor, Professor Briggins, and we are closing out Film February here on Video Games 101, the month where we did classes exclusively on games inspired by, based on 80s and 90s films. We're closing it out with Ghostbusters. Very large film in the 80s, very popular. Made one sequel a few years later and then a number of sort of sequels in the last 10 years or so at the time of this class, and they're still making them as far as I know, but I digress. Ghostbusters for the NES, it's not a great game, but when you know how to play it, you can take it down pretty easily, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Specifically, I'm going to give Ghostbusters a 4 out of 10 in terms of difficulty, which on the frustration scale equates to biting down on your controller, maybe on the stairs portion, maybe on the final boss. But we've got tips for both of those to make this a lot more manageable. Blaze is going to walk you through the somewhat nebulous items of this game so you have a better idea of what's going on there. But yeah, let's run the intro and get into this Ghostbusters NES walkthrough. Alright, as we start a new game here, let's take a look at the controls for Ghostbusters for the NES. We can pause with select for a change, drop the ghost food if you have it in your inventory in the Zuul Building with start, move with the D-pad, and switch Ghostbusters and open doors in the building with B, and then A does pretty much everything else. First thing we're going to do is stop off at the store and buy some items, and now with a look at the items of Ghostbusters, here's Blaze.
Alright, let's talk about the items you will find for sale in Ghostbusters. First you have the ghost vacuum, sucks up ghosts on the street. Then we have the sound emitter, slows the ghosts in the Zuul Building, very effective, but at 6 figures, what Ghostbuster can afford that? That's a lot of ghost busting. That would require you to play this game for much longer than we recommend here on Video Games 101. Then we have the 2 types of beams. You have the basic and the hyper beam, which allow you to stun ghosts and get them caught in your beam so you can suck them up with the traps we'll talk about in just a moment. But the hyper beam just goes a little bit further, so keep that in mind. It's more expensive, but it's worth it when you can afford it. Then we have the ghost food. We can use these in the Zuul Building by hitting start and drop some ghost food, and they'll very slowly gravitate over to this useful item. You can only buy this once, and you get 3 uses out of it, so don't try buying it multiple times. They'll sell it to you multiple times, but you'll get no use out of it. And then we have the ghost detector, which shows you which buildings are being haunted, saves you a little time on the overworld screen. And then you have, I suppose, the closest thing to what I'm going to call my item of the game, the ghost suit, which protects you, gives you extra hits before you get knocked down in the Zuul Building. And then we have the 2 different types of traps, the single use where you just need to keep emptying it basically, so you get to use it more than once, but it's a lot of extra trips to Ghostbusters HQ to empty it out. And then we have the nicer trap, which I recommend. It's more expensive, but you don't need to keep emptying it out. Saves you some time. In the long run, some money too, probably. The items of Ghostbusters, good bustin'.
Thank you very much, Blaze. Yes, good busting, or bustin', I should say. Bustin' makes me feel good. How did they get away with that line in the 80s? That's like that decade's WAP, but in the context of the film, it was clean, so everyone let it go. But imagine being out with your grandfather at a Sizzler's in 1985, and that song comes on. Bustin' makes me feel... What did he say, Johnny? No, Grandpa, that's what the Ghostbusters do. I'll bet it is. Grandpa is still a little suspicious, but anyway, let's take a look at the Briggs notes now for Ghostbusters. First, we have buy the right items early. Blaze talked about that. Really, all you need is the refillable ghost trap and then having a basic beam. Secondly, have the right items before entering the Zuul Building, and then also in the Zuul Building, have Turbo A mapped out so you can get up those stairs a little bit faster. That's pretty much all there is to it. There's one final note, which is a godsend in the Zuul Building. We're actually going to have Fluff come in and talk about that a little bit later once we get to the Zuul Building. It doesn't open up right away. You have to do some busting before you'll get a message, and now we have the message to enter the Zuul Building, but in the interest of kind of padding this class out, we're not going to go in right away. I want to make it clear that you can beat this game using the strategies we cover in this class in 5 to 10 minutes, quite handily. It's not a difficult game if you know what you're doing, but as I said, we're just going to drag this out a little bit longer, talk about this game a little bit more. So you'll notice when we're driving around, it makes very little sense, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's a few things I'd like to call out. First, I love that the Ghostbusters can't be bothered to stop for gas. Instead, they think the better strategy is just to ram into oil drums that have been carelessly dropped in the middle of the street. Or maybe by design, maybe the good citizens of New York City have dropped these fuel barrels in the middle of the street, knowing how busy the Ghostbusters are saving the city. Can't be bothered to actually stop off and refuel their car like every other New Yorker. No, they just instead just ram into some fuel barrels en route to their next bustin' assignment. And that's fine. One thing to mention about the barrels is that they always appear in the exact same spot once you're on the street. So if you know it's going to be, after you see the first one and it's in the right lane, you know it's going to be in the right lane. And the next 100 meters, yards, whatever those numbers denote. But just something to keep in mind. So you'll never have to stop off the literal gas station, the GS in the top left, right there, if you just hit these gas barrels in the street. The other thing to mention is that the Ghostbusters vehicle, unaccountably, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. You could be going at the slowest speed, or you could hold up to go top speed. You always burn through the exact same amount of fuel, so it doesn't make any sense to do anything except go top speed. You can avoid some cars, which means you can avoid taking some damage, which just means you're paying out, but that's not really an issue when you're playing this game. Money is not an issue. If you run out of money, I'm impressed, actually, considering how easy it is to bust ghosts. And you see when you collect 4 at a time, you get $3,000. So we're going to stop back off at the shop here, and we're just going to buy an anti-ghost suit because we got the money and the ghost food. Again, neither of these are necessary for when you enter the Zuul Building if you use Fluff's hack that he's going to talk about once we enter the building, but since we got the cash. Speaking of Fluff, let's bring him in here now and talk about the theme song for Ghostbusters, which we talked about earlier. Thankfully, we have a pretty good rendition here as the soundtrack for this game, but Fluff, what do you got for us?
We touched on this in our class on Back to the Future, but Huey Lewis and the News were approached by the Ghostbusters producers in the mid-'80s to tweak one of their existing songs to be the Ghostbusters theme song. Specifically, that song was I Want a New Drug from their sports record. Huey Lewis turned down the offer, and instead of adhering to their wishes, the producers went around their back and approached Ray Parker Jr. to basically rip off the song anyway and make the Ghostbusters theme that we all know and love. Huey Lewis and the News weren't too pleased with this and went ahead and sued them and ultimately settled out of court for an undisclosed amount of money.
Yeah, I'm just glad that the sound designer of this game actually did a half-decent rendering of the Ghostbusters theme. You don't really get sick of it this game. You don't play this game nearly as much as you do, or have to beat Back to the Future, but yeah, this one sounds a lot more like what it's meant to than the Back to the Future game, which we talked about in that class. You can check that out, link in the description, but as we continue on busting a few more ghosts, I think the next time we get the heads up that we're good to go into the Zuul Building, we'll head inside. Sometimes you can shoot off the beam a little prematurely if you see that, if you don't have them all on your beams, you know, if you see that last ghost kind of lingering in the area, just take a chance. Very important item, though, the trap, which you can just keep filling up over and over again. Otherwise, you got to keep schlepping back to Ghostbusters HQ, and it's just not efficient. So, for a few $1,000s more, get the reusable trap there. The other thing which is inexplicable is that the more you go around the map before you find the next building that you go into, the longer they make you drive. I guess it's meters right there, it says. So even though you saw on that map, the over map, if you want to call it, or whatever you want to say, even though we were right next to the building when we went in, they're still putting us 700 meters away just because we circled the map so many times. It makes no sense. Just as strange as when we just throw money out the window to some other car if they run into us or we run into them. Very little insurance is involved in this game. That was my understanding of insurance as a kid. Car insurance, at least, you know? Whenever anyone touched your car, regardless of whose fault it was, you just throw some money out the window. Shut them up. You're the Ghostbusters. That's all that matters. Keep them safe. This gets kind of redundant pretty quickly. All of these don't cross the beams, by the way. You can move the beam up and down once you have them out, depending on which Ghostbuster you're controlling with up and down. But that's a good way to quickly have to clear the screen. No real damage. You can cross your streams all day, cross the beam streams, but you don't want to make a habit of it. Let's just head back to Ghostbusters HQ just cuz. No real reason to do that at all if you don't have the single-use trap, but just in the interest of showing you a bit more of this game, let's go to the gas station too. I don't know how the gas station stays in business when they're just random oil drums just spread out in the middle of the street. I don't know how Ed Koch allowed that, by the way. That's an old reference. Kids. Ed Koch, famously the mayor of New York for most of the 80s. Just waiting on that Zuul Building. Go ahead once again. See if there's anything else we can afford that we don't have. Our inventory's kind of full right now. We don't even have Winston in this game. It's just the white Ghostbusters. Not sure what to think about that, but there you go. No love for Winston. See, we don't have the ghost alarm, so we just have to keep circling the city. I don't know why people can't just call us and then, you know, somehow they could page us or relay that information to us so we could go to the corresponding building, but while we're killing more time, let's go to Fluff for another Fluff fact about Ghostbusters.
While most people try to forget about this game due to how bad it is, one thing which most gamers remember is the sloppy translations from the Japanese to English versions. Most notably, the victory screen at the end reads, "Congratulations, you have completed a great game and proved, O, the justice of our culture. Now go and rest our heroes."
Certainly one interpretation of the English language. Thank you very much, Fluff. I meant to pad out this class a little bit by playing more of this game, but yeah, just the in-betweens waiting for the Zuul Building to trigger. And if you go in the first time, we have these nice longer beams here. It's nice. Nice to have all the perks. You don't need them, but yeah, if you go into the Zuul Building earlier before you have any perks, then yeah, most of the game takes place just climbing those stairs, even if you have the hack. Which again, I keep teasing, it's coming. It's probably the most challenging part of this game if you don't know it. Just take $100. Ghostbusters are always presumed guilty, I suppose. We are kind of driving right up on these people at full speed and hitting their bumpers, not even stopping, so probably avoid a couple lawsuits that way. Just throw some hush money out the window there. Again, they give us a little more leeway, seeing as we're saving the city from ghosts. Which don't seem to be doing that much damage to the city. They just kind of float around. It's like a bird, really, when you think about it. You just kind of look up and you go, oh, there's some ghosts. It might be better than birds, actually. They don't defecate on your car. But I digress. Once again, a lot of digression in this game. Is that a word? Digression? I'm a professor of games, not of etymology. Have to admit, let's cross the streams again, why not? And as we kill even more time, let's go to Fluff for yet another Fluff fact, this time about Ghostbusters the movie itself.
Similar to our class on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the film featured a hotline number which fans could actually call. The hotline number in this case was shown during the commercial in the film advertising the Ghostbusters. Director Ivan Reitman actually ran that same commercial on television during the film's theatrical release, and if you dialed the number featured in it, 555-2368 at the time, you'd hear a pre-recorded message from Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd informing callers that they couldn't come to the phone as they were out busy busting ghosts. Not surprisingly, the number is not in service today, but the call received hundreds of thousands of calls during the film's theatrical run.
It's a pretty clever bit of marketing back in the day. Like that. Alright, finally we can enter the Zuul Building. Alright. So as Blaze explained, the anti-ghost suit gives us a couple more hits before we get knocked to the ground, but if you get knocked down under normal circumstances 3 times, you're done, you're cooked. It's game over. So I'm going to attempt to get up to the top without using any tricks. We will show you the trick in just a moment, but if you're doing this the honest way, you're in for a long excursion to the top of the Zuul Building. I think it's 22 floors, actually. So I think we can take 5 hits before we get knocked down. Something like that, or we can get rubbed up on more times, or 2 more times. It's kind of hard to say. The hitboxes are kind of, they're not fair, exactly. And the ghost movements is pretty random, as you can tell. And the weird thing is, as you go up the stairs, it kind of moves all the ghosts with the screen, so it's a little tricky trying to figure it out. A good strategy if you're doing it this way, aside from having A on turbo, is just to kind of keep moving back and forth to keep your Ghostbuster formation tight. So you can see, everyone moves in a very... Probably shouldn't have dropped that there, because now that all the ghosts make a beeline to that pie. The ghost food. So you'll see, we'll keep our Ghostbuster formation tight. They all move in a conga line, 1, 2, 3. Exact same distance. And when you control the lead one, it takes a second for the guy in the back to catch up. So, if he gets rubbed up on by the ghost, it's a problem. So we're going to wait till all the ghosts get as close to that food as possible, and then we're just going to make a break for it. You can see they're not very generous with how long they give you before those ghosts just go flying. It's like they hit another gear once the ghost food is off the screen. Doesn't matter if you buy more than one, you only get to use it 3 times. So I think we only have 3 ghost pies. See? Yeah, that was a little iffy if you ask me. But we get a bit more leeway since we bought that anti-ghost suit. But let's go to Fluff now and finally talk about that trick so you can avoid all of this ridiculousness. Fluff, how's it work?
When in the Zuul Building, you can make yourself virtually indestructible by getting knocked down twice when opening a door with a ghost behind it. Technically, you get roughly 255 knockdowns. Yes, we actually counted, but that's more than enough to make it to the top. Note that the position of the ghosts changes each time you enter the building, so finding them behind the second or one playthrough may not translate to the next.
There you go. Thank you very much, Fluff. Yes, that is true. Normally we just take the normal recording that we do for the class and put that up as the gameplay video. We always do a non-commentary version of these games for people who just want to experience the game themselves, see it played through without all the explanations. We always put one of those up every week for the same game. Normally we just take the same recording, as I said, but for this game this week, I'm doing what I would consider to be more of a speed run of this, where as soon as we get that invitation to go into the Zuul Building, we go, and we use Fluff's trick to basically become indestructible as we climb the 22 or so floors of this building. So you can check that out to see a very quick playthrough of this, but again, I'm going to see if I can do it without any dirty but necessary tricks. I wondered what the point of opening doors was until I learned that trick from Fluff, actually. And you would see that ghost behind the door and you'd get knocked down and you'd say, well, what's the point of that? Very interesting, but in the meantime, we're just going to keep trying to keep our Ghostbuster formation nice and tight. Kind of wish we could all just kind of walk a little closer together on top of each other maybe, instead of having to account for the guy in the back. This is where I think Winston would come in handy, if we had him here. you would probably be like, what the heck are you guys doing? Why are you walking like this? In terms of an ideal spot to put down your ghost food, I would say just anywhere which doesn't lead ghosts straight into your path as they're coming towards you to get that food. It can be a little tricky. We're almost at the top here, just a few more floors to climb. There's that ghost saying what's up. I don't know if it's supposed to be like Slimer or something helping us out. And that, it's very much a Maniac Mansion-like sound when you get rubbed up on by the ghost. Kind of like a tentacle talking or something. I think it's the next floor after this. We're going to finally bring in Gary for the one and only boss beater of this game. Probably where most of the challenge of this game lies if you just use the stairs hack here that Fluff mentioned. Just trying to thread that ghost needle. And then once you get to the top of the stairs, they automatically just break for the door. I think we have one more hit. Anyway, let's go to Gary for the boss beater for Ghostbusters.
It's Scary Gary's Boss Beaters. Alright, Gozer, the final and only boss in Ghostbusters for the NES. The strategy here is to shoot in the middle left side, your left, of Gozer. This is where they're vulnerable. If you shoot just to the right of the middle, shots will go right through. But I found if you shoot just to the left of the middle, you'll always hit them. So that's where you want to aim and line yourself up most of the time. And then when there's just too many ghosts on the screen, you could take them out with one shot. But if there's just too many of them, in addition to all those bubbles and balls that are coming at you and his shots, just retreat down to the bottom of the screen. You can check on the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, see how close he is to climb to the top. But if you stay just to the left, when you take those shots, you should be able to take him down before too long. Good luck, you've beaten Ghostbusters.
Thank you very much, Gary. Yes, just to the what's that creature wearing, by the way? Is that like a bikini bottom with nothing on top? How did that get past the Nintendo sensors? Anyway, yeah, like Gary said, just stay a bit to the left, off center, get those hits in. Time isn't really so much of an issue, it's the damage that you'll take. Once you've taken a bit too much, your Ghostbusters will start flashing. And we got him. There we go. And there's got the message that Fluff referenced earlier. You completed a great game, congratulations, and proved the justice of our culture. Go and rest our heroes. There's something in every sentence right there. Good times. Anyway, that's our time this week. Thank you so much for attending this week's class. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. We do one of these classes every single week in the same spot. We'd love to have you enrolled. Also, leave a like on this video. It really does help us out. And leave a comment. Have you played this? What's your experience with it? Did you know about the hack that Fluff covered for the stairs, or anything else you want to mention about this game, the movie, whatever you want to talk about? Ghostbusters related, go ahead and do so. But we'll see you next week in the same spot for next week's class. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video, and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.